Chapter 31. Nina. Nine bells and half chime. Nina dared one more glance over her shoulder, watching the guards drag Inez away. She smiled, deadly. Inez can take care of herself. The thought brought Nina little comfort, but she had to keep moving. She and Inez had clearly been together, and she wanted to be gone before the guard who had stopped Inez extended his suspicions to her. Besides, there was nothing she could do for Inez now, not without giving herself away and ruining everything. She dug through the hordes of partygoers and shucked up the conspicuous horsehair clock, letting it trail behind her, then allowing it to drop and be trampled by the crowd. Her costume would still turn heads, but at least now she didn't have to worry about the big red top knot giving away her location. The glass bridge rose before her in a gleaming arc, shimmering in the blue flames of the lanterns on its spires. All around her people laughed and clung to one another as they climbed her above the isthmus, its surface shining below, a near perfect mirror. The effect was disconcerting, dizzying. Her two tight beaded slippers seemed to float in midair. The people beside her looked as if they were walking on nothing at all. Again, she had the unpleasant understanding that this place must have been built by fabricator craft in some distant past. Feudans claimed the construction of the ice was the work of a god or Saint Egmont, one of the saints they claimed had Feudan blood. But in Ravka, people had begun to rethink the miracles of the saints. Had they been true miracles or simply the work of the talented Grisha? Was it bridge a gift from Dale, an ancient product of slave labor? Or had the ice could been built in time before Grisha had come to be viewed as monsters by the Feudans? At the highest point of the arc, she got her first real view of the White Islands and the inner ring. From a distance, she had seen the island was protected by another wall, but from its vantage point, she saw the wall had been carved in the shape of Leviathan, a giant ice dragon circling the island and swallowing its own tail. She shivered. Wolves, dragons, what was next? In Afghan stories, monsters waited to be woken by the call of heroes. Well, she thought, they're certainly not heroes. Let's hope this one stays asleep. The descent on the bridge was even more dizzying, and Nina was relieved when her feet struck solid with marble once more. White cherry tree and slivery buttonwood hedges lined the marble walkway, and the security on this side of the bridge seemed decidedly more relaxed. The guards who stood at attention wore elaborate white uniform accented with silver fur and less than intimidating silver lace. But Nina remembered what Matthias had said. As you moved deeper into the rings, security actually tightened. It just became less visible. She looked at the partygoers moving with her up the slippery stairs and through the cleft between the dragon's tail and mouth. How many were truly guests, noblemen, entertainers, and how many were feared and soldiers or Draskell in disguise? They passed through an open stone court and placed doors into a vault entry several stories high. The palace was made of the same clean white, unadorned stone as the ice coat walls, and the whole place felt as if it had been hollowed out of glacier. Nina couldn't tell if it was nerves, imagination, or if the place really was cold, but her skin puckered with goose flesh, and she had to fight to keep her teeth from chattering. She entered a vast circular ballroom packed with people dancing and drinking beneath a glistening pack of orbs hewn from ice. There had to be at least 30 massive sculptures of running, leaping beasts. Their flanks gleamed sickly in the silvery light, jaws open, the slowly melting muzzles dripping occasionally onto the crowd below. Music from an unseen orchestra was barely audible over the gabble of conversation. The elder clock began to chime 10 bells. It had taken her too long to get across the stupid glass bridge. She needed a better view of the room, and headed for a swooping white stone staircase. She caught sight of two familiar figures in the shadows of a nearby alcove, Cass and Matthias. They made it, and they were in Duskull uniforms. Nina suppressed a shiver. Seeing Matthias in those colors settled a different kind of cold into her bones. What had he thought when he put it on? She let her eyes meet his briefly, but his gaze was unreadable. Still, seeing Cass beside him gave her some comfort. She wasn't alone, and they were still on schedule. She didn't risk as so much as a nod of an acknowledgement, but continued up the stairs to the balcony on the second floor, where she could get a better look at the flow of the crowd. It was a trick she had learned in school from Joya Nazilansky. There were patterns in the way people moved, the way they clustered around power. They thought they were drifting, milling aimlessly, but really they were being drawn towards people of status. Not surprisingly, there was a large concentration adding around the Fiadan queen and her attendants. Strange, Nina thought, observing their white gowns in Ravka. White was a servant's color, but the crown wasn't anything to sniff at, twisting spines of diamonds that looked like branches glowing with new frost. The royals were too well protected to be used of her to her, but not far away. She saw another whirl of activity around a group in military dress. If anyone knew Yulbayur's location on the island, it would be someone highly ranked in Fierce's military. Nice view, isn't it? Nina nearly jumped as a man slided up beside her. Some spy she made. She hadn't even noticed him approaching. He grinned at her and placed a hand at the small of her back. You know, there are rooms here aside for little fun, and you look like more than little fun. His hands slid lower. Nina plunged at her rate and he dropped like a stone, conking his head on the banister. He'd wake up in about 10 minutes with a bad headache and possibly a minor concussion. Is he alright? Asked a passing couple. Too much to drink, said Nina airily. She slipped quickly down the stairs and into the crowd, moving steadily towards the where a group of soldiers garbed in silver and white military dress surrounded a portly man with a luxuriant mustache. If the constellation of medals on his chest was any indication, he had to be a general or close to it. Should she target him directly? She needed someone of high enough rank to have access to privileged information, someone drunk enough to make it ill-concerned, considered decisions, but not so drunk that he couldn't take her where she needed to go. By the ruddy look of the general's cheeks and the way he was swaying on his feet, he looked as if he might be too far gone to do anything but take a nap face down in a potted plant. Nina could feel the minutes ticking down, and it was time to make her bid. She nabbed a glass of champagne, then moved carefully around the circle as a soldier separated from the group. She took a step backwards, directly into his path. He slammed into her. He was light enough on his feet that it wasn't much of a hit, but she gave a sharp cry and lurched forwards, spilling her champagne. Instantly, several strong arms reached out to brace her fall. You clawed, said the general. You nearly knocked her from her feet. And on the first try, Nina thought to herself, never mind, an excellent spy. The poor soldier's cheeks were bright red. Apologies, miss. I'm sorry, she said in Kurdish, feigning confusion and keeping to the language of the manager. I don't speak Fiadan. Deep apologies he attended in Kurdish, then made a valiant attempt in Kalish. Much sorry. Oh no, it was my fault entirely, Nina said breathlessly. I'll go and stop slaughtering her language and fetch her a glass of champagne. The soldier bowed and hurried off. Are you quite all right? Shall I find you a seat? The general asked in excellent courage. He just startled me, Nina said in a smile, leaning on the general's arm. I think it might be best to get you off your feet. Nina restrained an arch of her brow. I just bet. But first, I need to find out what you know. And miss the party? You look pale. Some rest in one of the upper rooms will help. Saints, he doesn't waste any time, does he? Before Nina could insist that she was perfectly well, but might like to take a turn on the terrace, a warm voice said, really, General Clint, the best way to garner Emma's goodwill is not to tell her she looks sickly. The general called his master whistling, but then he seemed to snap to attention. So true, so true. He laughed nervously. Nina turned and the floor seemed to drop from beneath her feet. No, she thought, her heart shuddering in panic. It can't be. He drowned. He's supposed to be at the bottom of the ocean. But if Joel Broom was dead, he made a very lively corpse.